I 100% totally forgot about this when I had a baby. When I had my first 3 kiddos, we did the heel poke, and then they took it for testing for genetics, and I just never thought anything about it. And then the 4th kiddo, they couldn't get a good heel prick in the hospital. And then when we went to the doctor a week later for his follow-up visit, they couldn't get another good heel prick. And at that point, we were like, wait, why are we doing this heel prick, this poor baby? They were like squeezing and squeezing. They were like, well, let's do the other heel. And it just took so much effort to get all of those little spots on the piece of paper. If you've had a baby, you know what I'm talking about. They have to get little blood spots on a bunch of different spots on the piece of paper. Then they send it. And I said, send it to who? Why are we doing this? I never even considered this. We just did it because the hospital just does it. They don't even ask. They just do it because the state requires it, is what I was told. And then I went to the doctor's office and they said, well, the state requires it. And I'm like, what do you mean the state requires a heel poke and genetic test for my kids? So listen to this guy.
Okay, so we're at the pediatrician, and I want to explain something to parents, all right? That beautiful little baby right there. Here's the thing. The doctor just made the mistake of telling me, well, this screening is required by the state. I looked at her and I said, I take umbrage to somebody telling me that anything for my child is required by the state because we don't live in a communist country and the state does not own my child.
So this was the first time I ever even thought about the heel poke. And what do you mean the state requires it? And what does the state do with it? They do genetic testing. But the more I've researched, and when I figured out, Henrietta Lacks, if you haven't heard her story, you should look up the story, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. There's a really great book about her. But basically, the state now has, and this sounds so conspiratorial, but it's true, the state now has your child's DNA. And they can do whatever they want. It's now the property of the state. And this was after 4 kids the first time I said, no, we're not going to do genetic testing. The odds of him having a genetic issue are incredibly low anyway. So we just said no to genetic testing because they're not state property. They're my babies. And if you want to do genetic testing for your baby, have at it. There's a lot of good that can come from that. You can prepare, you can have resources. But to say that the state requires it is a lie. You don't have to do anything. They're your child.